The next earrings that we will be creating are these chain drop earrings. And I chose to have them start small and then get bigger in size, and I went with a pink quartz bead. Next up, we have our silver ear wires to match our silver plated 20 gauge copper wire. For our tools, we will be needing the nylon jaw pliers, the wire cutters, flat nose pliers, and our round nose pliers. To begin creating the earrings, we will pull out a length of wire and straighten it with our nylon jaw pliers. I chose the smallest bead because I want it at the top. Then I'm going to grab my needle nose pliers and leaving about a half to 3/4 of an inch of the end of the wire off the end, I'm going to create a 90-degree turn into the wire. Then readjusting my pliers, we are going to take the long end of the wire and bring it around to create a loop. Readjusting our pliers, we will place them back into the loop, and taking the short end of the wire, we will wrap it down and around the long end of the wire underneath the loop. Hold the wire in the pliers tightly as you wrap that short end of the wire around the long end. Switching our pliers into the other hand, we are going to grab the flat nose pliers and use both pliers together to help tighten down that short end of the wire. Once we have secured the end of the wire, we will draw the bead back up to the top. Placing the wire back into the pliers, we are going to leave a little space, bending the wire over 90 degrees, and then readjusting our pliers. Take the long end of the wire, wrapping it around to create a new loop. Once we have created the loop, we will then readjust our pliers again and take the long end of the wire, wrapping it around and around underneath the loop to match the top. Once we have finished wrapping the wire, we will snip it off with our wire cutters. Using the needle nose pliers to help keep the chain link from sliding back and forth, we can then use the flat nose pliers to securely press down the ends of the wire. Using two sets of pliers together like this helps us when we are working with a smaller piece of jewelry, such as this little chain link that we are creating for our earring. Next up, we are going to create our second chain link. So make sure you add your bead onto the wire before we start bending anything. Then using our needle nose pliers, we'll create a bend in the wire, bringing the long end of the wire around to create the beginning of a loop. Before closing this loop, we want to open that bend up a little bit so that we can attach our first chain link that we made onto the wire. Slide that first chain link on, then press the loop closed, holding it tightly in our needle nose pliers. Now we can take that short end of the wire and wrap it around underneath the loop. Switching our pliers in our hands, we will then take the flat nose pliers so that we can finish securing that end of the wire. Now that we have attached our first chain link to the second one, we can bring up that bead and begin creating the second loop for our second chain link. Placing the wire into the pliers, we're going to bend it over 90 degrees. Readjusting our pliers, placing it back on the wire, we will then wrap the long end of the wire all the way around to create a loop. We will then take that long end of the wire, wrapping it down and around the loop. Using our wire cutters, we will cut off the excess wire. Then using both of our needle nose pliers and flat nose pliers, we are going to flatten down that short end of the wire, pressing it securely so that there's nothing sticking out. As you can see, it's super helpful to be able to hold the chain link with the needle nose pliers because this piece of wire would be too small to hold in our hands and be able to secure the wire tightly with the flat nose pliers alone. And now we have created our second chain link. We're going to create the third chain link in the same manner as the second one. Putting our bead onto the wire, we are then going to create a small loop in the end of the wire, leaving an excess which we will wrap in a moment. Before closing that loop, we want to twist it a little bit open so that we can add our chain onto the wire, and then we can close the loop, placing it in our needle nose pliers and wrapping that short end of the wire around to the base underneath the loop. Then we will grab our flat nose pliers so that we can tightly secure the end of the wire. Now that we have created the top loop, we will then draw up our bead and create the loop on the other end. Using our needle nose pliers, we will bend the wire over at 90 degrees, then take the long end of the wire, wrapping it around to create a loop. Then take the long end of the wire and wrap it around underneath the loop. Once we have finished wrapping the wire, we will snip it off with the wire cutters. Then, using the needle nose pliers again and our flat nose pliers together, we are going to tighten down the end of the wire. Continue creating chain links until the earrings are as long as you want them to be. You can also use this method of creating links to make a bracelet or a necklace. I'm going to create a final chain link. This chain link begins as the other ones, where we create a loop at the top, but at the bottom we are going to bend the wire in a slightly different manner. Placing it into our pliers, bend it all the way up, creating a U shape. Then we will take our wire cutters and snip the wire off just below the bead. Then take the flat nose pliers and crimp that end of the wire until it is tight against itself. Now we can add our chain link onto our French hooks. Twist open the loop on the ear wire, add the chain link, and then close the loop. Well done! You have just created a whole chain out of wire.